recording so that I remember to record this session. And so I would like to welcome everybody. This is the closing session for KOOLCon. Has everybody had a good time over the last couple of days? Been able to get to a couple of good sessions here. I'm also going to check my chat to make sure that you all are able to participate. Yes, everybody can participate in the chat. And so many of you have been with us throughout the conference, and so you have already been able to sit in on Dr. Courtney Plotts' keynote speech, and then we also had a great interactive Q&A session with her later in the day yesterday. For those of you who aren't familiar with Dr. Plotts, she is the National Chair of the Council for At-Risk Student Education and Professional Standards. She's the author of a couple of books on Latinx and Black culture and online spaces. And her session yesterday, if you did have to miss it, it was recorded and will be shared out to everyone. And for this session today, the title of the session is Building Community, Who is in the Online Space. And as you all are participating in the session, feel free to drop questions in the chat. If the previous sessions are any indication, this will be an interactive session. You have the opportunity to chime in and ask questions and those types of things. So feel free to do that. I'll be moderating the chat to make sure anybody's questions get answered. And with that, Courtney, I will hand it off to you.
All right. Can you all see me? I'm not sure because before I saw myself at the bottom, but today I don't. So I just want to make sure.
I see an icon.
Yeah, and I said, oh man, okay. Yeah, because I don't see you. Okay. Yeah, because I put on camera. That's not share video. And this is share video. You're about to share your video. And it says I'm sharing, but I don't know. What would you like me to do? Just present anyway? Because I don't know why this is doing this. I don't know if this has something to do with like why I couldn't get in or.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and proceed.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I'm sorry, everybody. And it says it has the little red dot up at the top. It should be recording, but for some reason it's just not. So, okay, well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for having me again, and thank you so much for being patient with me yesterday. That internet concern was a real big concern of mine. So I'm back in my natural habitat, back in my office where I am usually my best self. So I want to thank you and welcome everybody. And so yesterday was kind of an information dump on some of the things that have to do with cultural responsiveness, and there was a lot of information to download. So today is a lot more of the practical things that I want faculty to think about, and just really some key take-home pieces that you can kind of implement in your classroom right away, and just kind of thinking a little bit differently about things like participation, and things as far as cultural responsiveness and really building community in a class and really harnessing the power of behavior. And it was so funny. Someone has to tell me, does anyone know for sure? I think it's Leah is her name, Leah Parsons Simmons, and her and Wheeler were talking on the post, and they found it fascinating, or I'm sorry, on Twitter. And one of the things that they talked about was, hey, I didn't realize when you're talking about something like plagiarism that, you know, it's gonna kind of, you know, if we don't change our introduction, that it's kind of tied to that piece, right? That we're teaching students a behavior, they're repeating that behavior. And so that's one of the things that I want to talk about today is, you know, as you're thinking about your students learning, what can they do in their online environment? And this is do. This is really, we want them to do a behavior. So again, just to highlight that, and also just real quick, if anybody knows, because Leah Parsons Simmons has a cute little picture of a French bulldog. If someone can just let me know if that's actually her dog, because I have a little French bulldog and I want to share a picture with her. So anyway, oh, okay, perfect, okay. All right, if we have time, I'll show you all my picture at the end. My dog's in a little pink shark vest because they can't be around water or else they'll drown. So anyway, yeah, they're amazing. They're great dogs. So we're talking about, that's hilarious, Josie Burrows. We're talking about, just that behavior. So there's certain things that students are doing and they're replicating in the online space, and we really don't want some of that behavior replicated. But there are things that they're doing naturally that we're not highlighting. So in this presentation, that's what we're going to look at. We're thinking about social modeling, and there's typologies of student behavior that we find in online spaces, and in each of those typologies, it has 6 areas. And so what I'd like to do today is just kind of introduce you to these concepts. And I will tell you, I'm working on a scale for these. I'm not done with the validity testing yet, or else I would give it to you and you could give it to your students, but I'm still working on some of the validity of the questions. So, so without further ado, what I want you to think about is, since you have been an instructor, whether it was just prior to the pandemic and you've only been teaching online, or you've had kind of these other experiences, what is something, you can just type in the chat, what is something that you have learned by watching someone else do, and you've kind of taken that into your teaching? And you don't have to name the person, but just what you've learned via observation. Was it something to do with classroom management? Was it a discussion forum style? Was it something in person, an activity that you prefer? So just post in the chat, what's something you learned by observation or for someone modeling for you? Give it a minute or two. Go ahead, just post in the chat. What's something that you've learned from watching a peer or watching a coworker? Give it a couple more minutes. There you go. Engaging students via chat. My physics professor would always give me some history, famous physicists. Yeah, excellent. Those are great examples. I know for me, it was watching one of my co-teachers who had, in the K-12 level, who had amazing classroom management. And that was a really, really powerful thing to watch, because she did it so masterfully. Like it was like art, where she could command a room with respect, and there was still a little bit of, support there, but, nothing too adversarial. All right, let's see. Being an online student while being an instructional design student, yeah, absolutely. Chunking, the interaction, yeah, thank you for that. So a lot of times we see people do things, or we see the outcome of what they do, and we say, okay, I want to do that, right? And so our students, again, are doing a lot of this behavior anyway. And some of the big questions in the online space are, who are we in the online space? And does this transactional difference that this computer creates, does it change how we behave? And for some people it does, and for some people it doesn't. But who are we really? And what do you do when you're in an online space? And what motivates us when we're in an online space? And how do we tap into learning access? How do we ask our students to learn in a way that's kind of access-based? And one thing I want you to be thinking about right now is participation. How many of you, and there's no right or wrong answer for this, how many of you give participation points or some sort of contribution points in your class? Yeah, Lori, it is. It's really powerful. So how many people give some sort of participation grade, or some sort of weight grade wise to participation, if anybody? And this may change. Nobody? Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lori. Yeah, and this is what I want you to be thinking about. One of the challenges with participation points, yeah, exactly, for attendance, exactly. So thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Lori. So we're gonna tackle both of those concepts. So one of the things that's happening. Okay, yep, use it for in person but not online. Right, Beth, because it's so different, right? What do I do? Do I check your logins for online participation, or you maybe overshared or responded to 12 posts instead of the 2 that are required? That can make a difference. So we're going to show you today how you can use these both in face-to-face and online settings if you needed to. And so the question is when we talk about participation, student participation, what's really of value? And a lot of times what people are used to is, if a student does X, then I will give them X, which works to some level. But the question is it really back to that task-oriented idea, or are we really looking at the communal side of learning? And so that's what we're going to look at today. And so when we think about online course development, and we think about just course implementation and instruction, the question is, are we designing for this social modeling? So let's say that I was in Lori's class and Lori offers participation points and I'm an online student. Is there something in that environment that models not the outcome, but the behavior behind the outcome? So let's say Lori offers participation points for posting in the, auxiliary chat that you've created. And so I post in there. So I know the outcome. I want the points and I'm going to post something. But if I really want a student to do something that's meaningful, there has to be some sort of value and investment in why I'm doing what I'm doing. So it very well could be the points are enough, but again, that goes back to that transactional culture. And so the idea is, how can we help students model more than the desired outcomes? And one of the things that's great about online learning is, if I'm someone who is struggling with reading or writing, but I can do it well enough to kind of get the gist, I can look at other people's posts and I can say, okay, great. I see what the instructor's looking for, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do something similar to that. But again, how does that thought even form? Is the other student reading an article? Are they reading the text? Are they just doing it off of the top of their head? So that behavior, that process that happens behind the scenes, isn't necessarily seen by or modeled for our students. So what goes into this? So when we're thinking about what human influences make a difference in an online learning space, or just a learning space in general, people have perceptions about online learning. They have perceptions about the material. They have emotions, right? Maybe their last online class was super great and the expectations are really high, or maybe it's the reverse. We have social behaviors, right? What is expected in this space? And one of the biggest challenges that really nobody talks to, faculty talk about it all the time, but nobody really addresses it, is that the generation we're teaching now are digital natives. So they learn technology backwards to the way that a lot of us learned it. So we learn technology for educational purposes first, and then social purposes. They learned it the total reverse. They are on social media before they go to kindergarten. Their parents are on social media before they go to kindergarten. So a lot of those ingrained behaviors that have to do with technology happened long before they get to our classrooms. So we really have to ask ourselves, if our students are digital natives and if they're used to socializing in different ways, how can we harness that for learning? How can we harness that for community building? And that's what we're going to look at. And the question becomes, when we're thinking about connecting with students in an online space, do people really need to be connected? And this is where I really need to give a Joseph, aren't points of any sort for any reasons by definition transactional? Yeah, someone's doing something for a payoff or to receive something. So yes, absolutely. Do people really need that sense of community? Do they need the connection? Some people do and some people don't. But what's interesting is some students might not select a behavior that's necessarily academic, but they're taking in all the information. So for instance, yesterday we had a chat. There were some people participating, there were some people just watching, right? So that doesn't mean that somebody learned less or somebody learned more. It just means that some people were actually doing a behavior called typing and then put a thought together and put it in. And some people were not on my end, but that doesn't mean that they weren't texting with someone else, talking with them either about what we were talking about or something totally different. So connection is what we make it as instructors. And I like the point you made, Joseph, so thank you for pointing that out. Oh, excuse me, I skipped a slide. So the question is again, going back to that kind of idea of sense of self-efficacy and self-motivation, we can only help students develop that, right? We can't just make that happen. But the challenge is that it leaves kind of this whole other facet of education behind, and really looking at how we can use what students are already doing to connect them to the content we're teaching and to connect them with each other. So there's a little bit more to it than what just the general research discusses. So let's talk about it. So if we were going to look at a typology of a student, what we're going to focus on today is connection. But the typologies have these 6 areas, and it looks at connection, it looks at thinking, it looks at the feelings that go with things, it looks for a response to the culture, and again, that could be academic, collaborative, cognitive, or communicative, or actually the ethnic culture that's provided in the institution. It can be, it's also, the typology is negotiate, so this doesn't mean negotiate, and that can be interchanged depending on how the class is set up, because it could be negotiate or navigate. And then the growth point. So if you were trying to support someone in growing in the class and connecting more with students, how would you do that, right? How would you connect students with one another? How would you connect them to the curriculum? So here are the 8 types of online learners, and these are based on behaviors that are happening in the class. And the good news is that most of the time, all of these things are happening, but we just aren't putting them in the forefront of our courses. So we're going to go through these one by one, and each one of these is going to have a suggestion for you or a sample to show you how you can kind of harness some of these behaviors. So and one of the reasons why you want to think in this way is because a lot of times faculty are taking on things that are already happening, that if you just said them in your classroom, students will do them. And they're already doing them, it's just you're not making it part of your course. So it's really kind of like a flipped classroom model in some ways. But it also, again, provides the social modeling that may be there and is only happening with a small group of students when you can expand it class-wide. So let's start off with this. So there's one group of people called the clarifiers, right? And clarifiers are the people who ask the questions based on clarity. So this is your student who has no problem asking questions for the group, right? Asking on behalf of the class. This is usually the person that will start an outside Facebook group page, and they will come to you directly and go to the Facebook page and say, hey, we've started a group, here's that information. Sometimes clarifiers are good at kind of supporting people and creating these networks, but they sometimes struggle to advocate for themselves. So they can be struggling and they won't ask for help, but yet they're always just kind of making sure that the people around them have the clarity and what they need to kind of move forward. So again, some more of those behaviors. I shouldn't even say behaviors, I should have said more kind of perception, but they don't mind publicly and privately asking questions. They really see value in the answer that you give them, and they help others by clarifying things and creating understanding. So one of the first things you can do is ask those clarifiers. You can say, hey, I'm going to assign you points of clarification. So once you get clarification on an assignment, I'm going to expect you to give that clarification out to everybody, because they're doing it anyway. They're doing it on the side on a Facebook group. It's just not that everyone's part of that Facebook group. So if you kind of make that part of your course, that can be very, very helpful. Additionally, don't waste your own energy. Go back through your courses, find all of the questions that your students have asked you, and post your answers again. Show the students what your answers, look like in past courses. Now, some of it may be assignment specific, and that assignment changed, so obviously that would not apply. But there's some things that students ask a lot. Let students see how you clarify things. Do you just redirect them back to the syllabus, or are you trying to make a relationship and say, hey, I'm here to help you? And some people will allow students to rotate topic questions, right? So they're the person kind of driving, they're collecting the questions from other students, and so that side conversation isn't being wasted. And so there's a whole bunch of other questions. They can drive the inquiry of other students, so let them do it. But again, you know, people do this, they say something like this, they'll say, I'm going to create a thread for questions, right? And they say, place your questions here, I'll respond within however long. Instead, you can go all the way back to your other classes and again, model that. What does it look like to ask a question? Was it answered in a timely manner, right? So reflect and model what your policy says. If you say you get back to students in 24 hours, show your students that you do that, right? Show them an older thread, or I'm sorry, an older discussion board that you had about your questions. So next is the inquirer, and they kind of sound the same, but they're not. So an inquirer is someone who is a troubleshooter. So the second that you start discussing your the project that's due, they're thinking ahead. Well, what if this happens, and what if this happens, and what if that happens? They're kind of one step ahead. A lot of times this is the student who comes to just talk with you after class, or you know, in a Zoom, and they have a lot of questions, but they're asking to take their own anxiety down. They're not asking to necessarily share that information. And so these students and learners and people are motivated by the prevention of catastrophe. They don't like surprises. They really don't like the idea that things are going to change. They want to know sometimes kind of exactly what it is that you want, right? How many of you have heard that question from a student? I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you want, right? That's an inquirer. Wheeler said, sometimes I post videos to the questions and leave those for next class. Exactly, perfect example. Exactly. So what do inquirers do? Well, they ask all the what if questions. I should put quotes around that. What if questions, right? What if this happens? What if that happens? And they value a really clear pathway to success. If I do this, will I receive an A? And a lot of times, if it's not clear what is required to get a good grade, that's when you're getting a lot of that pushback. And you say, hey, listen, I lined it up. I told you exactly what you needed to do. But if they didn't perceive that in the place, it can be very, very difficult for that student to kind of flow back into the course process. And so one of the things that you can ask a clarifier to do is, or I'm sorry, an inquirer, is say, okay, listen, I'm going to go over this with you personally to make sure you understand it. And just to triply understand it, when I present what this is to the class, I want you to present the last two steps or the first two steps and make sure that we're all in understanding about what I'm asking you to do. Again, sharing any assignments ahead of time, let your students see how you grade. And a lot of people are into ungrading, which is fine too, but you know, if you've graded someone's paper, ask a student from your prior course, and again, you can take their name off it and all the identifying information, but share with students how you grade. It shouldn't be a mystery. And again, you can post those FAQs from a past course if needed. So again, we're tapping into that behavior. Then we have community members, and these are the people who are just naturally motivated by that cohesion. They are opening to connecting with others. They want that genuineness. And so the question is what can we do for those folks who really just kind of see the benefit and really seek out other people? What can we do with people who are motivated by that common experience and also motivated by a sense of collectivism? Well, one of the things is what we talked about yesterday. You can use a community rubric. But the other thing is let students make side discussions based on your own topics, right? Because there's a way, sometimes people, how many of you have learned something backwards? You just put yes or no in the chat, right? You thought you were learning one thing and then you started learning another, but you realized it was related to something else, right? So it doesn't always have to be that kind of strict, there's one discussion for 1 week and one discussion for another. Let people move around. Let people talk about the same subject coming from a different angle. And I don't have time to go into it today, but there's a method called the neighborhood discussion. And you're creating topics based on these kind of behavioral archetypes, and then you're asking students to reflect from that lens. And so they have to participate in a certain amount of discussions, and everybody's welcome in each discussion, but it's just looking at the exact same content a little bit differently. And the other thing is, we really have to ask ourselves, who are the learners in your space? So when we're thinking about creating a community, and we're thinking about bringing students together with the content, we're thinking about bringing people together, who are the people in your environment, right? Whether it's face-to-face or online, how do you view your students? Do you view them as learners? Are they explorers? Are they stakeholders where they have a responsibility to everyone that's in that space? Are they citizens? Are they decision makers where, hey, listen, I've given you all the information you need to be successful. Here, you can make decisions about this and that. Either way, you're going to get X grade. How do you look at that? And so that's a big, big thing, and that's a big piece of it. And you also have to ask your students, how do they see themselves? Are they seeing themselves as learners? Do they feel like they have enough choice in your class? Do they feel that it truly is a learning community where they're a citizen of the community? So really just asking faculty and asking students to think just a little bit differently about that. Caregivers. There are lots of students who naturally care for people. Sometimes they care so much they stop participating to care for the people in the classroom. And they say, oh, you put me in that group, and I know we had that stuff, but so-and-so had an issue, and I was helping them. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's not being, overused or underappreciated by someone's, group member. Excuse me, someone's group member. But they are doing those caring behaviors, and so. So one of the things that so caregivers are funny because they kind of look like the inquirers and the clarifiers, right? They don't mind asking questions on other people's behalf, especially if they're super shy. They do see the value in answer because they see that communal piece. And they also help others by kind of clarifying things in a way for that specific individual. So they're very, very supportive on an individual basis. A group is a little bit harder. They really like that one-on-one. So one of the things that you can do, because again, it's happening anyway, is ask people, if you think that this is you and you think you're more of a caregiver, then your responsibility for the class or your participation points, just do a weekly check-in with your peers. Your job, there's 40 people here because you can't do it all. They can't do it all. So divide and conquer, right? So let them, if they're going to naturally do it, let them do it and say, hey, this is just an email I'm sending out to everybody, just checking in on everybody. How's it going? And again, people can respond or not respond, but that's what they're doing anyway. They're just doing it with the people that are closest to them. So if that's a class expectation, it's way more likely that you can expand that across your course. Instead of what's happening now is faculty are teaching and everybody comes to the faculty member and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I couldn't do this because of that, and I have all of these things going on in my personal life, in my private life. Well, the students are talking about those things anyway. So again, and really creating those healthy boundaries, right? You're creating those healthy boundaries because it's not codependency. We don't want students codependent on us. We don't want them codependent on each other, but you can absolutely support the idea of caregiving in your class without it being something that is thrust upon someone or something that is required, right? It's just a way to get extra points because it's happening anyway. Oh, this all shifted again. The stakeholder. So the stakeholder is an intrinsically motivated person who has really a commitment to the larger picture. So a lot of times these are our students or learners or people who just see the end goal. They just kind of need to get there. They are motivated by their own efforts, they're motivated by other people's efforts, and they really kind of just want to get the work done. These are some of the most flexible people as far as the big picture. If the big picture shifts, they're okay with that. But where they struggle is if I see the big picture and you told me how to get there and there's a change, I'm not necessarily ready for that. I'm not ready for that change. And so sometimes I can lose all my motivation when there's a change in the course. They are also somewhat of emotional sponges, similar to caregivers, but stakeholders are a little bit different because they have a high sensitivity to being wronged. So if they've been in a group, they can, and they feel that someone's not pulling their weight, it can get very ugly very quickly. But they're also great encouragers. Just like caregivers, again, it's kind of that same feel, and just really, why is it great encouragers for staying? Sorry, that should be staying. Great encouragers for staying the course. So they're able to kind of see the big picture, pull their peers along. And again, this also goes for caregivers as well. Posting an announcement in the course about change. So if there's a change made to the course, how is that change dealt with? And I'm actually asking everyone now, and there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious for everyone on the webinar today. How do you announce change? So if something happens in your course that requires you to change, whether it is weather or whether it is, hey, this just isn't working with this group, we're going to change this activity. How do you make that change? Do you just think about it, an announcement? Do you ask students to vote on it? Do you give them options? What's your go-to for that when there's a change in your course? We'll give people a couple of minutes. I see Wheeler said, yeah, but sometimes I think students like perfectionists and are afraid to make mistakes. Yeah, absolutely, well, that's true too. So Lori says she just uses an announcement. Yeah, just post it. Yeah, so it usually happens in a way that's information giving. Something's happened, I'm posting it, here we go. But what makes people more malleable to that is if, yeah, sometimes Lisa says sometimes if she's in person, she does a vote online, I post it. So one of the things that you want to do is prep your students for change. Send out an announcement, but also post a message at the top of the course. Yeah, thanks, Marcia. Yeah, all of those things work. And that's just one thing you want to think about. You're already doing it. So one of the things you can do is say, okay, when there's a change, even before we need to make a change, I'm posting that in my announcement or I'm putting that in my syllabus. I'm saying if there's a change in the course, this is the ways it's looked in the past. It doesn't mean it's definitely going to be this way, because sometimes I'm just going to have to make the announcement and we're going to have to roll with it. But other times it may be that we're going to vote on it, or you're going to have a different choice. And that's really important because of COVID fatigue. People are so exhausted of the back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so really kind of setting the table for letting people know what's coming is really important. The other thing is also helping people understand what you mean by flexibility. So some instructors say something like, hey, I'm flexible, I'll work with you. Again, that means so many different things to so many different people. And so the question is when you're thinking about someone who has a long range vision and they're happy to help people like caregivers, but they really struggle with the concept of change, what does flexibility mean in that? So in your course, if they need to make a change, or if there's something that you're going to be flexible about, some people think that flexibility means you're going to do all the work. That's not what that means. So really kind of thinking about that, what that means for your course, what that means for you, and also just kind of honor the idea of commitment. So because people were committed to a vision and they have trouble shifting to something new, doesn't make them a bad person. It means they're struggling with the change. So really just honoring, hey, listen, I appreciate your honor to the commitment that we had before. I know that that was important. I know that a lot of you were planning this, but we had to change because of that. And I think that was the part that was missed, again, during the pandemic. There was no honor for the commitment that people had already showed. It was kind of like, we're doing this, now we're doing this, we're doing this, now we're doing that, now we're doing this, now you're expected to like it. And it's like, that's not exactly the best outcome for that. You know, there was very little discussion of the honor of what people had done prior to and during. So the decision maker. So the decision maker is someone who is always kind of scanning the environment, and they are driven by what they see. And when I say data, I'm using that term very loosely here. If it was leadership, it'd be a little bit different. But for learners, they're just seeking everything visual. So they're making all decisions based on kind of what they can see and if it's measurable. And this is important when you're thinking about building syllabi. We'll talk about that in a second. So decision makers like explanations of change. It doesn't mean that you have to give students one. It just means that that's what they prefer. So if a change is happening, they want to know why. So you ever notice you have some classes and students just roll with it and they're like, okay, no problem. And then you have this one student who's like, well, can we still do it this way though? And can I still? And I really already started and I'd like to. They really, if they're making a change, they want to know why. A lot of time they're grade driven, and also a lot of time they want to know, one of the first questions they ask is there extra credit, right? What are the opportunities, and do we have it? And if we don't have it, then this is how I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And they're constantly weighing the efforts versus the payoff. So if, and maybe this is some of you as well, when you were in college, or if you're in college now, some of you are true academics, and this is what I'm about to say is going to hurt your heart, and some of you are academics, just a different type, right? And so one of the things that people do is they'll look at a syllabus and say, what do I need to do to pass? And that I'm just weighing out my options. I'm just trying to see, where other people are like, this is what's asked of me, this is what I will do. And so there's some easy ways to kind of get around this. I'm going to start with the one in the middle. When you create your syllabus, one of the easiest things to do is create the data that's in your syllabus in multiple ways. So a lot of times people will use a table and they'll just say, this assignment is this many points and this is when it's due. But one of the things you can do is take that same data and put it in a bar chart or put it in a circle graph. One, you're helping STEM literacy, and two, it's a visual for students to be able to see what the majority of the points are worth, because sometimes we make our own point systems, and so it's harder for students to follow, which is fine if you use points, but can you present that data in another way that would be helpful for students? You can also create outline or list areas for students as far as selected materials. So for instance, maybe you say this is what is needed, and then you have, you know, how you have your optional reading space. You can ask students, you know, participate in giving me some other things that you'd like to explore. Let's look at, so again, going back to that other example, you know, show them how you've graded in the past. Show them what that looks like, because without that, for some students, it's very daunting to get that first paper. And again, these are things you have at your disposal. This isn't something you're creating for your students. Create opportunities for group and individual choices. So maybe some choices in your class are made for as a group, right? You're voting, and then some people have individual choice in how they do what they do. And sometimes they don't. And if you hear nothing else that I've you know shared with you, one of the questions I get most often is, well, Courtney, you know, I teach, you know, science, or I teach, you know, a technical class. I can't change the material, you know, for, like, I can't change it. It's based on a, you know, certification program, or it's based on our state regulations. Then if you can't change the content, you have to change the method of delivery. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here, is looking at, if the content is one way, and this is, you can't change it, you can give students in how they digest that information. All right, and then we have the advocate. So these are our students who are really passionate about social issues. And again, they might be passionate about social issues that you're not passionate about, and that's okay. But these are our students who are always on the psychological and social move. They're extrinsically motivated by social and psychological changes in their environment. They're always looking to share information. And so those are some of the pieces of students who show a typology of advocates. So So one of the things that they do in online spaces is they're looking for injustice at some point. They're looking to say, hey, wait a minute, this is not fair. Hey, that I didn't like how that happened. They desire to share opposing views. So this is your student who, you know, maybe everybody's in agreement, and this is the student who's like, well, I don't feel that way. That doesn't look like that for me, or I'm not thinking that way. And then, and a lot of times they desire to support causes publicly and privately. So again, they're doing all of this anyway. And Scott Wright and I, he's at the University of Arkansas. We've been looking at this a lot. His work focuses on LGBTQA+ students. And one of the things that we were looking at is, you know, for LGBTQA students who might not be out, but they're online, what can people do to support that's within the framework of whatever the institutional policy is, because depending on where you are in the country, that looks very different, right? So we don't want to have a dumpster fire on campus. We don't want people getting hired and fired. Like, we just want, you know, to show that support. So what's happening right now is a lot of people are just putting in a diversity statement. They're saying, okay, look, we're just going to take this statement, we're going to slap it in our online class, we're going to slap it in the online learning platform that's with our course, and we're going to move forward. But the truth is that you can put out an all call for allyship in your online course, and you can ask your students what they think allyship looks like and what you would like it to look like in the course, and they can help you do that. Now, does that mean that they're commandeering your content and changing it all and you know, kind of commandeering your class? No. But what it means is you can make a statement that allyship is important, and that doesn't mean just LGBTQA students. That could mean someone who has a learning disability. That could mean someone who, and again, because of the way the laws are, if I'm your student, I don't have to tell you that I have a disability. But if I see that post about allyship, that means that you understand that that could be of value to me. So you can post an announcement about allyship and what you deem to be appropriate allyship examples for your course. So for instance, just based on personality, someone may be a lot more open to students building a safe space or brave space and kind of monitoring that, as opposed to them doing it themselves. So it just depends on you as the instructor. Additionally, you can work with your students who are advocates, ask them to create a reading list for you or a resource list of their favorite books. You know, maybe it's just author representation that you need, which is a lot easier to do, honestly, in classes like English or psychology or sociology. But when it comes to the STEM group, we have to work a little bit harder to do that. But again, our students, and I know some people, I did this last week, and one of the people listening, he's like, well, my students don't read, so how would I get them to make a reading list? You know, and then I said, well, then get their favorite book on tape or whatever you need to do. I know that out in California, a lot of the faculty members that I worked with for one of our teaching certifications, they were all into the reading list. And so they had just students kind of just post their favorite reads just to show the point of pleasure reading. Now, she taught biology, but it was just to show that, like, hey, people read, they read very different things, and maybe these things would be of interest to you, right? So just increasing that literacy piece. Also, resource piece. If you are not familiar, and I want to say it's still 411, and I'm just going to look it up while we're on here. And if you don't have this where you are, the United Way, are you, just post in the chat, are you all familiar with 411 for your students? If not, just let me know. Or 211, I'm sorry, it's 211. Are you all from, just yes or no in the chat? I just don't want to, okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, if you're not, I'm going to post it right here. So one of the things that you can do early on to help, just to show, again, on your end, just the demonstration of allyship and advocacy and support, there's a national 211, I was saying 411, sorry, 211.org is from the United Way, and it literally has everything in it. It has dental help, it has divorce help, it has housing, it has doctors, it has dentists, it has, if you name it, they have it. This is a national line, and you can find someone local. It has an ability to find something local. But one of the things you want to do before you even start talking with your students, give them a resource. Just assume everyone needs it, because what happens is a lot of people will go through their syllabus and they say something like, hey, if you need help with this, go to this center. And if you need help like that, go to this center. Well, now everyone around them knows if they go to that center or this center, that they need help with X, Y, or Z. Where with this, what I did when I was teaching, and I still do now, is I say, listen, before we even get started, I want to show you a resource. And this pretty much has anything. And so I know it may not help you, but it could help someone you know. Because why do our students walk with their feet? Why do they ghost? Usually because it's their people that are struggling and not them. They're busy trying to get childcare for their child, or they're busy trying to, maybe take care of an aging parent, right? Or working two jobs, and transportation's an issue. So definitely just share that. And thank you, Kim and Denise and Laura for sharing that with me as well. And then we've got the mentors, right? So these are those people who just love to mentor people. They just have kind of this natural capacity of kind of reflecting what people are saying, and they really enjoy working one-on-one or in small groups. And they really love, this is the person who posts in their introduction and they say, hey, happy to meet everyone, can connect with everyone. MW, sorry, not sure of your name, but MW, they were free. It depends on the state, and it depends more so on what services they're already receiving, because they could refer them back to a service that is not something that they're already receiving. So you'd have to call and just check to see. Now in our state of Florida, there's literally a handout, and everything on that handout is free. Now in your state, I don't know Kentucky well enough, but I do know that during the pandemic, this was all of North America. So it went into Mexico and it went up into Canada. So just look and see. I would definitely consult whoever your local people are. MW, does that make sense? Because you wouldn't know what services your students are on, but they know, if that makes sense. Okay. Mikey, okay, perfect. Yeah, it's just really helpful, and just let them peruse it. Even I've given them 5 minutes in class and say, just look, is there something there that can help you or someone you know? Just take a look at it, because there might be resources there that even, maybe we can use, right? There's a lot of adjuncts that are living on the poverty line. That could be something that they could use. And I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying across the country, we see those articles in the Chronicle of Higher Ed all the time. So again, what are those kind of behaviors? They want to support people, but they don't want to be on the stage doing it. They don't want to be in front of a big group. They really just kind of want to do it in private and support people. They really look for personal growth points. How can I be better? How can I help someone else be better? I really have a strong model to show people what I do. Or how I do it. So one of the things I just did is I made small study groups for my students, and they can use it or not use it. But one of the things that we put in our course culture is the expectation of social modeling. So that's not my expectation. That was something that the students wanted. So they said each week someone had to show them a study technique. And so each week for 5 or 10 minutes, we take class and someone would show people how they do what they do. So whether they would take pictures of their notebook and submit them online so we could look at them, or, some students do have a .cam, most don't, but really just kind of sharing their takeaway of their best tip or trick or hack, right? So again, making those modeling opportunities for students, making mentoring part of that cultural norm. We have to normalize failure in academia. It is more commonplace now, and it really, where are those growth points that we can really help students kind of go to the next step? Support small group mentoring opportunities, again, if there's mentoring on campus or just within your course. And also be honest with yourself. If you don't have a mentor, so many people, well, let me say it like this. so many institutions, I've talked to so many faculty, and they say, I was assigned a faculty mentor and have never met with them. I was assigned a faculty mentor, or they're too busy, right? So if we're not even valuing it for ourselves, it's hard to do that for our students. Everyone should have access to someone. Everyone should have access to someone who's in their corner and there to support them. So we want to do that same thing for students, okay? So with that, you know, can you see yourself in any of these? And you don't have to share which one, but do you see yourself in all of them, one of them, two of them, none of them? You just post that in the chat. What do you think? Do you see yourself in one or more, just one? Depends on the day. Inquire, yeah, thank you, Melissa. Multiple, yeah. Mentor, Yeah, some of them will kind of jump out at you. Yeah, I certainly ask questions for the group. Yeah, just that clarity, right? Just helping, right, thanks, Christina. Yeah, multiple depending on the day. And depending on, just to build on what Christina's saying there, depending on the situation too, right? It's different situations call me to be different people. But what we know is, in our classrooms, when we're face-to-face, we don't stop students for caring for one another. We might not address it because it happens naturally. So someone's like, oh, my pen broke. And someone else is like, oh, I have a pen here. And we think to ourselves very quickly, oh, that was nice, they have a pen. Okay, that's great. But in online spaces, it happens a lot slower, which is why we really need to think about how we're giving information and how we're really kind of using those things that are already there to support learning. So with that, you can just type a takeaway in the chat. Hopefully no one is unsettled today. That made me sad yesterday. So if you were unsettled, I'm so sorry. If it was something I said, I apologize. And if it was something that was just going on, I apologize. But whatever takeaway you have, and if you have any questions, just post them. Otherwise, this has been an awesome, awesome opportunity. I've had so much fun at your KOOL conference. And yeah, if there's anything else, Kim, just let me know.
Okay, so I've been watching the chat and I have not seen, oh wait, we do have a question coming in from Joseph Garr.
Sure.
If you ask questions for the group, how do you know what the group wants? How do you know you are meeting the group's needs?
Yeah, that's great. So Joseph, you can ask people, it depends what you're trying to do. So some people just do a needs assessment specifically based on that. I'm trying to think of the quickest way to answer your question because I know there's not too much time. I'm assuming you mean when you're saying if you ask questions for the group, how do you know what the group wants? Do you mean like if I were to, is what you're asking, if I'm the instructor and everyone on the chat is the student, how would I know what your needs are? Is that, I just want to make sure I understand the question.
And while we're giving him a chance to type his answer to that, I just want to announce that we have a couple of prize winners. Joseph Garr is actually one of them, and Cindy McKenzie is the other. You won random attendance awards. So each of you will get a copy of Dr. Plotts' new book, Cultural Intentions. Our team will get with you next week in terms of where to send that. Okay, so if you were the student.
So Joseph clarified, he said, if you are the student asking questions for the group, meaning if you are the student who's assigned to ask questions. So one of the things that you would do even beforehand is really talk to the group about what they value. And I was making some assumptions there. So this is assuming that you really have kind of set the table for inquiry and asking the questions, right? So question asking isn't taboo. There's not a power dynamic. There's not kind of these, you know, there's not a barrier between you and your students. And so there's an expectation for the students that you can set as instructors, say, listen, these are the questions that I want you to focus on. You know, if there are questions about assignments, you know, you're going to be in charge of those. Or if there's just general clarification questions, you're going to be in charge of those. So a lot of times people just ask them to monitor the chat and then try to see if they can answer those questions on their own in the question thread. And sometimes people want students to bring questions to them. So it really just depends on how you set it up. And again, it's really about a culture of interdependence. because again, students are doing this anyway. Students are asking their peer instead of asking you. So what we're doing is saying, that doesn't have to be a secret. You can ask that with your peers, and there are people here that will connect all those other people who have the same questions, but who might be afraid to ask us. So thank you so much. That was such a great question. And Joseph, if you need to email me or just contact me if you want to discuss that further, I can put something more clear in writing for you. I'm happy to do that. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Lori. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I know it's been a long day. And I'm so sorry my camera's not working. I have no idea why. So it was working before I reset my computer, and then it wasn't. No problem, Joseph.
At least we got to see your face yesterday. And
yeah, I do exist.
You do exist. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, the recordings from previous sessions will be available on the KOOLCON site. I've got that link in the chat. Please do fill out the evaluation. I put that link in the chat as well. Those evaluations, your feedback's super helpful to us in terms of planning for future conferences. So I want to thank Dr. Plotts for the many sessions you did and the great information you shared. Thank everyone for attending, and I hope you all have an amazing weekend. So thank you. Bye-bye.